Have you ever woken up and felt like a stranger in your own life? You go through the motions, work, responsibilities, expectations, but deep down something is missing. Not money, not success, not even love, but a sense of who you really are. You've spent years building a life that looks good on the outside, but inside there's a quiet emptiness. You tell yourself that when you achieve more, when you finally prove yourself, you will feel whole. But that moment never comes, and it never will, because what you're searching for isn't out there. You don't lose yourself all at once. It happens gradually. Every time you silence your own voice to fit in. Every time you follow the path laid out for you instead of the one calling your name. Every time you let fear decide for you. But here's the truth. You can find your way back. You can strip away the expectations, the masks, the weight of who you were told to be, and uncover the man you were always meant to be. And when that happens, life doesn't just change, it begins. Have you ever had a moment that made you question everything? A moment that made you stop and ask, is this really me? If you have, share your journey. Because the path to finding yourself is never walked alone. Let's move forward together. 1. You don't need approval. You need self-respect. First, from yourself. There's a prison without bars, a cage so subtle most never realize they're trapped inside. It's built from invisible chains. Approval, validation, the quiet desperation to be seen, to be understood, to be accepted. You've felt it. The hesitation before speaking your mind, the pressure to fit in, the fear of being judged. Every time you silence yourself, every time you shape your actions around what others expect instead of what you believe, you lose a piece of yourself. And if you're not careful, one day, you wake up and realize there's nothing left. Most people spend their lives chasing validation like beggars, hoping that if they impress enough people, if they gain enough approval, they will finally feel whole. But that moment never comes, because the more you seek approval, the more power you give away. The moment you let others decide your worth, you become a slave to their opinions. And here's the truth, no one tells you. No one will ever give you permission to be yourself. That permission is yours to claim. A man spends years working late, taking on extra projects, going above and beyond, not because he wants to, but because he's terrified of disappointing his boss. He never demands a raise, never negotiates his worth. Instead, he hopes that if he works hard enough, someone will notice. But they never do. Another man stays in a relationship that drains him. He changes his habits, his opinions, even his dreams, just to keep someone who wouldn't do the same for him. He calls it love, but what he's really doing is slowly erasing himself. And then there's my friend. He had a dream, something that lit him up from the inside, something he was willing to suffer for. But he walked away from it. Not because he didn't believe in himself, but because others didn't. They told him he was being unrealistic, that it wouldn't work, that he should settle for something safer. So he did. And years later, the regret in his voice is louder than any of their opinions ever were. This is how it happens. You don't lose yourself in one dramatic moment. It happens in small, quiet choices. The times you play it safe instead of standing your ground. The times you hold back instead of stepping forward, the times you let fear dictate your path. And before you know it, you've built a life that looks good on the outside but feels empty on the inside. But you don't have to live this way. You can break free. You can take back control. Because there is a kind of power most people never experience, the power of not needing approval. The moment you realize that not everyone needs to understand you, that their validation does nothing for your soul, is the moment you take back control. Self-respect is the foundation of a strong mind. Without it, you will always be at the mercy of others. With it, you become unshakable. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." Why do we put more weight on the judgments of strangers than on our own inner voice? Why do we let the opinions of people who will forget us shape the way we live? Because it's easy. Because standing on your own, without applause, without recognition, demands a level of strength most aren't willing to cultivate. But you are different. If you weren't, you wouldn't be here. And the truth is, when you stop chasing approval, everything changes. You work not to impress, but to build. You speak not to please, but to express. You create not to be liked, but because it matters. You do things because they feel right, not because they look right. And something else happens. You attract respect. The world may not always agree with you, but they will recognize someone who stands firm, someone who owns their space. Look at the most powerful, respected figures throughout history. They weren't the ones who conformed. They were the ones who refused to. Success is not about making everyone happy. It's about standing for something so strongly that even those who disagree with you can't ignore you. Think of the people you admire. Do you respect them because they followed the crowd? Or because they didn't? Self-respect isn't something you're given. It's something you earn through action, through discipline, through choosing yourself over and over, even when it's hard. Define your values. If you don't know what you stand for, you will fall for anything. Stop apologizing for who you are. You don't owe the world an explanation for being yourself. You don't need permission to live life on your terms. The only permission that matters is your own. And embrace the discomfort of standing alone. When you stop living for approval, people will push back. They will call you selfish, arrogant, and stubborn. Let them. Their resistance is proof that you're finally living for yourself. Do hard things. Comfort breeds weakness. If you want to respect yourself, give yourself a reason to. Push yourself beyond your limits. Train your body. Strengthen your mind. Build something that lasts. Because at the end of the day, self-respect isn't about what you say. It's about what you do. You have two options. Continue living for the approval of others, bending, conforming, shrinking, hoping that one day you'll be enough. Or stand up. Decide that from this moment forward, you are done waiting for permission, done explaining yourself, done apologizing for being who you are. Because the truth is, not everyone needs to understand you. The only person who does is you. And when you get that right, everything else falls into place. Stop seeking approval. Start building respect. And watch what happens. 2. No one is coming to save you. A man watches his business collapse. Years of effort, investments, and sleepless nights, gone. He tells himself he's unlucky, that the market is unfair, and that someone should have warned him. He waits for a miracle, for someone to rescue him. But nothing changes. Another man sits on his couch, scrolling through his phone, promising himself that tomorrow he will start working out. That next week, he will finally take control of his health. He waits for motivation, but it never comes. And then there's the person who blames their past for their failures. They tell themselves they never had the right opportunities, that they were dealt a bad hand, and that life is unfair. They wait for closure, for justice, for someone to acknowledge their pain. But the past doesn't apologize. It doesn't offer redemption. It just stays there, exactly as it was. This is how most people live. Trapped in waiting. Waiting for someone to recognize their worth. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for circumstances to change. But here's the truth. The hard truth most refuse to accept. No one is coming to save you. No mentor, no friend, no lover, no government, no stroke of luck will swoop in and fix everything. No one owes you anything. No one will hand you a better life. And if you keep waiting, you will wait forever. It's a brutal realization, but also the most liberating one. Because once you stop waiting, once you take full ownership of your reality, you gain something most never have: control. The moment you stop hoping for an outside force to intervene, you become the force. People waste years, sometimes decades, in the illusion that their lives will change when the right opportunity comes along. But opportunity isn't something that arrives, it's something you create. The person you envy, the one who seems to have it all together, didn't stumble upon success. They made choices. They moved when they had nothing. They stepped forward when doubt was loudest. And they didn't wait for permission. There's a saying in Stoicism: fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling. Either you take charge of your life, or life will drag you forward, kicking and screaming while you cling to excuses. You have a choice: to remain passive, blaming circumstances, or to stand up and act. Think about it. The successful business owner didn't wait for conditions to be perfect. They adapted, they learned, they failed, and then tried again. The disciplined athlete didn't wait to feel motivated. They built habits. They trained when they were tired, when they didn't feel like it, when no one was watching. And the people who rise above their past don't do it because their pain was erased. They do it because they refuse to let it define them. The problem is that most people don't want to hear this. They would rather believe in luck, in external circumstances, in fate. Because taking responsibility means admitting that the life they have now is a result of their own choices. That's terrifying. But it's also the key to freedom. Because if you are the reason your life is the way it is, then you are also the solution. So where do you start? First, you stop making excuses. You stop telling yourself that you need more time, that you need someone to guide you, that you need circumstances to align. You don't. You start with what you have right now. Second, you move. You take action, however small. You apply for that job. You start that business. You show up at the gym even if it's just for 10 minutes. You write that first page, make that first call, take that first step, because movement creates momentum. And third, you stop expecting instant results. You don't plant a seed and expect a tree the next day. You show up every single day and you keep going, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Most people quit when results don't come fast enough. They tell themselves it's not working, that they weren't meant for success, and that maybe they should just go back to waiting. But those who understand the truth keep going. They don't rely on motivation, they rely on discipline. They don't rely on circumstances, they rely on themselves. They don't wait, they build. And one day, after months and years of persistence, they look around and realize they did it. Not because someone saved them, not because luck found them, but because they saved themselves. So ask yourself, are you still waiting? Waiting for motivation, for opportunity, for someone to fix things for you? Or are you ready to stand up, take control, and move? Because the path isn't found by standing still. You must walk. And if you do, if you keep going, no matter how slow, no matter how uncertain, you will find what you're looking for. The road is there. But no one will walk it for you. You must take the first step, and then another, and another. Because no one is coming to save you, but you can save yourself. 3. You don't lose yourself in a day, but bit by bit. The chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they're too strong to be broken. Samuel Johnson. Losing yourself doesn't happen in an instant. It's not one dramatic moment of betrayal or failure. It's slow, subtle, silent, like a candle burning down, like a rope fraying strand by strand. It happens when you make small compromises, when you silence yourself, when you choose the easier path instead of the right one. And before you know it, the person staring back at you in the mirror is a stranger. My brother is the perfect example. As a child, he loved painting. It was the only thing that made him feel alive. But our father had other plans. He wanted him to work in finance, to have a stable career, to be practical. My brother, like so many others, chose to obey rather than disappoint. He told himself it was temporary, that he would return to his passion one day. That day never came. 20 years later, he's successful by every external measure, but inside he's empty. He spends his days in an office, crunching numbers, living a life that was never his. And the saddest part? He doesn't even know who he would have been if he had chosen differently. This is how people lose themselves. Not with a single wrong turn, but with 1,000 tiny steps in the wrong direction. Every time you give up a dream for the illusion of security, every time you stay silent when you should speak, every time you shrink yourself to fit someone else's expectations, you lose a part of who you are. You trade authenticity for approval, purpose for comfort, identity for survival. And one day you wake up wondering, how did I get here? Think about it. Do you remember who you wanted to be before the world told you who to become? Before you were shaped by expectations, responsibilities, or fear? I do. I wanted to be an explorer, to see the world, to chase the unknown, to live fully. And yet, even now, I struggle. I make plans, I hesitate, I tell myself that maybe it's not the right time. But if I'm not careful, I know exactly how my story ends. Another dream postponed, another voice silenced, another life unlived. So how do you stop this? How do you reclaim yourself before it's too late? First, you must recognize the signs of losing yourself. Are you making decisions based on what others expect instead of what you want? Are you staying in a job, a relationship, or a situation that drains you because it's easier than change? Have you stopped questioning? Stopped dreaming? Stopped feeling alive? These are the warnings. the quiet alarms most people ignore until they can't anymore. Second, you must confront the fear that keeps you stuck. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of uncertainty. But here's the truth. Staying in a life that doesn't fulfill you is the greatest failure of all. Living for the expectations of others is the deepest form of rejection, because you are rejecting yourself. And clinging to a false sense of security is the most dangerous illusion, because nothing is more uncertain than a life unlived. Stoicism teaches us that control begins with the self. You don't control what others think, what society expects, or what the past has given you. But you control your choices. Every single day, you make decisions that either bring you closer to who you are or further away from it. There is no in-between. You don't need to change your life overnight. You don't need to throw everything away and start from zero. But you must start. You must take a step, no matter how small, toward what truly matters. It could be as simple as setting boundaries, saying no to something that doesn't align with you, picking up an old hobby, even if you're out of practice. Ask yourself, what do I actually want? And daring to answer honestly. Most people never do this. They tell themselves that one day they'll pursue their passion, that eventually they'll make a change, that soon they'll start living the way they were meant to. But one day turns into never, eventually becomes regret, and soon fades into too late. The world is full of people who wake up at 40, 50, or 60 years old and realize they lived a life that wasn't theirs, that they became a person they never meant to be. They lost themselves so gradually, so quietly, they didn't even notice it happening. But you don't have to be one of them. Right now, in this moment, you have a choice: to continue down the path of quiet compromise, or to turn around, to step back into yourself, to start reclaiming what was lost. It won't be easy, it won't be comfortable, but nothing worth having ever is, because in the end, the only thing worse than losing yourself, bit by bit, is realizing too late that you never tried to get yourself back. 4. Build yourself. Don't just find yourself. What if the version of yourself you're looking for doesn't exist? What if there's no true self waiting to be uncovered? No magical moment where everything suddenly makes sense? What if the idea of finding yourself is just another illusion? One that keeps you stuck, waiting, searching, instead of building. Too many people believe that somewhere out there, their real identity is waiting for them like a buried treasure. They quit their jobs, take a trip, read a few books, and meditate, hoping that clarity will strike like lightning. But what happens? They return to the same life, the same habits, the same confusion. Because you don't find yourself, you build yourself. A man I once knew spent years chasing this illusion. He hated his job, so he left. He felt lost, so he traveled. He told himself he was searching for purpose, but in reality, he was avoiding the work required to create it. Months passed, then years. He drifted, waiting for a sign, waiting for inspiration, waiting for something to happen. But nothing changed, because he wasn't changing. One day, he realized the truth. No one was going to hand him meaning. No epiphany was going to fix him. If he wanted to become someone different, he had to create that person. This is what most people get wrong. They wait for motivation instead of forcing themselves to act. They wait for the perfect conditions instead of doing what they can with what they have. They wait to feel ready instead of realizing that readiness is a lie. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Stop questioning, stop overthinking, stop waiting for the right moment. Just start. Imagine a sculptor staring at a block of marble. He doesn't sit around wondering what the sculpture inside wants to be. He doesn't wait for the marble to reveal itself. He chisels away piece by piece, refining, shaping, and removing everything that doesn't belong until the masterpiece emerges. That's what you must do with yourself. You are not something waiting to be discovered. You are something waiting to be built. And that process, it's uncomfortable. It's slow, it requires effort. It means waking up earlier than you want to. It means working when you don't feel like it. It means choosing discipline over comfort, growth over ease, and persistence over excuses. It means defining your values and refusing to compromise on them. It means choosing action over endless self-reflection. Because the truth is, most people aren't searching for themselves. They're avoiding the hard work of self-mastery. The difference between those who succeed and those who stay lost isn't intelligence. It isn't talent. It isn't luck. It's consistency. It's the ability to show up every single day and chip away at who you are until you become someone worth being. Think about the people who inspire you. The leaders, the creators, the innovators. Do you think they found themselves? No. They built themselves. They didn't wait for the right moment, the right mood, the right circumstances. They created those things through effort and action. They failed, they adapted, they persisted. One of the biggest lies we tell ourselves is that success, purpose, and identity are things we stumble upon. That one day, everything will just click, and we will know who we are. But look around. How many people do you know who have been waiting for that moment for years, decades? How many dreams have died waiting? There's nothing to find. There's only something to create. If you wake up feeling lost, it's not because you haven't discovered yourself. It's because you haven't built yourself into something worth being. If you don't like where you are, it's not because you haven't figured things out. It's because you haven't done the work to create a better version of yourself. So what does it take? First, stop making excuses. Stop telling yourself you don't have the time, the resources, the ability. Work with what you have. Every great achievement starts with less than you have right now. Second, commit to action. Stop waiting for clarity. Clarity comes from movement. Start working out, start writing, start learning, and start practicing. Even if it's messy, even if it's slow, even if you don't know exactly where it will lead. Third, embrace discomfort. Growth is painful. Transformation is hard. But nothing is more painful than looking back and realizing you wasted years waiting for something that was in your control all along. A man who builds himself understands that failure isn't an obstacle. It's part of the process. He understands that uncertainty isn't a reason to stop. It's a reason to keep going. He understands that confidence doesn't come from knowing you're capable. It comes from proving it to yourself again and again. There's a reason the Stoics place such an emphasis on self-discipline. Because without it, you are at the mercy of your emotions, your doubts, your fears. But with it, you are unstoppable. You are in control. So stop searching, stop waiting, stop asking who you should be, decide, choose, and then build that person through action, through effort, through relentless discipline. Because if you don't, no one else will. 5. The darkness within is not your enemy. There was a boy in my class who used to get angry a lot. Whenever he lost a game, whenever a teacher criticized him, whenever something didn't go his way, his face would turn red, his fists would clench, and he'd lash out. Teachers called him hot-headed. Other kids avoided him. Even he was ashamed of it. One day, after another outburst, our teacher pulled him aside and said, "Your anger isn't the problem, you just don't know how to use it." That line stuck with me. Because isn't that the truth? The things we fear inside ourselves, anger, fear, pain, loneliness, aren't problems to be erased. They are forces to be understood, mastered, and directed. Yet, most people do the opposite. They suppress their emotions. They deny their pain. They tell themselves they shouldn't feel this way. But emotions don't disappear just because you ignore them. They sink deeper, controlling you from the shadows. You fear failure, so you never take risks. You fear rejection, so you never speak up. You fear being alone, so you stay in relationships that drain you. And worst of all, you convince yourself that these are just practical decisions. Avoiding pain is the same as choosing peace. But that's a lie. The more you run from your darkness, the more it controls you. I remember a friend who was betrayed badly. He trusted someone, invested time, energy, and love, and in the end he was left broken. For years he carried that pain, but instead of facing it, he buried it. He told himself he had moved on, that it didn't affect him. But it did. Every relationship after that was sabotaged by his own distrust. Every moment of vulnerability was met with walls he built so high that no one could climb them. He thought he was protecting himself, but in reality, his past was still running his life. This is what happens when we suppress the parts of ourselves we don't want to face. They don't vanish. They don't dissolve. They fester. They grow stronger in the dark, influencing our decisions, shaping our fears, and keeping us small. The real battle isn't against the darkness itself, it's against our refusal to confront it. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They didn't believe in eliminating emotion, they believed in controlling it. mastering it, using it. Marcus Aurelius didn't tell himself to be fearless. He told himself to act despite fear. Seneca didn't deny the pain of loss. He prepared for it, accepted it, and learned from it. True strength isn't found in pretending you're unshaken. It's found in learning to stand firm when the storm comes. There's a simple truth. Your darkness is not your enemy. It is your teacher. Pain is the most honest thing in the world. It tells you where you are weak. It tells you where you need to grow. It forces you to evolve, to adapt, to break past your limits, if you let it. I once knew someone who lost everything. A business, a home, a future he had planned for years. He had every reason to give up, to drown in self-pity, to let the darkness consume him. But instead, he did something different. He looked his pain in the eye and asked, "What now?" He didn't run. He didn't deny it. He used it as fuel, as motivation, as a fire to build something even stronger. That's the difference between those who thrive and those who stay broken. It's not about what happens to them, it's about what they do with it. Some let their struggles define them, others let them sharpen them. So what about you? What pain are you still running from? What part of yourself have you been avoiding? What fear is still whispering in the back of your mind? Because here's the truth. You will never outrun it. At some point, you must turn around and face it, and when you do, you will realize something powerful. It was never your enemy. It was always your strength in disguise. 6. Solitude is not the enemy. There was a time when my life was full of people. Friends, colleagues, acquaintances. I was always surrounded. There was always a plan, a meeting, a gathering. Noise filled every corner of my day. And then something changed. People moved on. Priorities shifted. The calls became fewer. The invitations stopped coming. And I found myself alone. At first, it felt like something was missing. Like I had been left behind while the world kept moving. I tried to fill the silence. More work, more distractions, more scrolling, more anything to avoid the stillness. Because that's what most people do. They chase social gatherings, they bury themselves in work, and they fill their days with endless distractions. Not because they enjoy them, but because they fear what happens when everything stops. They fear being alone with their own thoughts. They fear silence because silence reveals the truth. But here's what I learned. Solitude is not a curse. It is a gift. Most people never find themselves because they never stop long enough to listen. They drown in the expectations of others, in the noise of the world, in the constant search for approval and belonging. They become who they are expected to be, instead of who they were meant to be, and they wonder why they feel lost. But you do not find yourself in a crowd. You find yourself in solitude. There is a reason why the greatest minds in history, philosophers, artists, warriors, have all embraced time alone. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet his most profound reflections came in solitude. Seneca found clarity, not in conversation, but in silence. Because solitude is where you hear what the world has been drowning out. But we have been conditioned to fear it. Society tells us that being alone means something is wrong. That if you aren't constantly surrounded, constantly connected, constantly in motion, you are failing at life. They sell the idea that happiness is found in external validation, in relationships, in social circles. But the truth? If you cannot be at peace in your own company, you will never be at peace anywhere. I knew a man who was terrified of being alone. He filled every moment of his life with meetings, events, relationships, anything to avoid the silence. When one relationship ended, he immediately found another. When a job felt unfulfilling, he jumped to the next. He never sat still, never reflected, never stopped running. But you cannot outrun yourself. One day, life slowed down for him. A career setback, a failed relationship. For the first time, he had no distractions, no noise, just himself. And he realized he didn't even know who that was. This is the trap most people fall into. They think they are living, but they are just distracting themselves from the inevitable reckoning that comes when they are finally alone. But solitude is not the enemy. It is the key. So what do you do with it? First, embrace the discomfort. It will feel empty at first. The silence will be loud. The lack of external validation will be unsettling. That's normal. It means you are finally hearing what has been buried beneath all the distractions. Second, use it to sharpen your mind. The greatest growth happens in solitude. Take walks without your phone. Sit in stillness. Write. reflect, read. Challenge your thoughts, question your beliefs, let your mind be still long enough to find clarity. Third, understand that solitude is a test. Most people fail it. They escape into distractions. They convince themselves they need constant stimulation and that being alone means something is wrong. But the strongest people, the ones who truly know themselves, pass this test. They learn to be alone without being lonely. And finally, make solitude a discipline. Just like you train your body, you must train your mind to function in silence. You must teach yourself to enjoy your own company, to seek growth instead of escape, and to sit with your thoughts instead of running from them. There is a power in solitude that most will never understand. When you are comfortable being alone, you become untouchable. You no longer need external validation. You no longer fear the opinions of others. You no longer seek distractions to numb your thoughts. You stand firm, unshaken, knowing exactly who you are. So the question is, can you sit with yourself? Can you let the silence in? Can you stop running and finally face what you've been avoiding? Because solitude is not your enemy. It is your greatest teacher, but only if you are willing to listen. 7. Everything is a test. There was a boy who struggled in school. No matter how hard he tried, his test scores were always below average. He studied late at night, promised his mother he would improve, and put in the effort. But every time he got his results, disappointment followed. One day, after another low score, he was ready to give up. But his mother said something that changed everything. You're looking at the wrong thing. You only see the failure, but you don't see the progress. Look again. Your scores are rising. Not fast, not dramatically, but they are. Every effort you make is adding up. The only way to fail is to stop trying. That's life. Most people give up too soon. They look at obstacles and see them as proof that they're not good enough, not meant for success, and not capable of achieving more. They believe challenges exist to break them. But here's the truth. Everything in life is a test. The setbacks, the failures, the rejections, they're not here to destroy you. They're here to shape you, to see how badly you want it, to test whether you'll stand up or stay down. And most importantly, to separate those who only say they want something from those who are willing to fight for it. Look around. Everyone has dreams. Some want to build a business, some want to get in shape, some want to change their lives completely. But how many actually follow through? How many push through when it gets hard? How many see an obstacle and keep going anyway? Most people quit at the first sign of struggle. They think failure is a sign to stop, when in reality, it's just a question. How much do you really want this? The world doesn't hand out rewards for easy efforts. It rewards those who refuse to give up. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius didn't see hardships as punishments. He saw them as opportunities to strengthen his mind. Epictetus, who was born a slave, didn't curse his circumstances. He used them to forge a will that no one could break. Seneca didn't complain about suffering. He embraced it as part of life's training ground. That's the mindset you need. Because every time you face a challenge, you have two choices. Let it define you or let it build you. Think of a blacksmith forging a sword. He doesn't take raw metal and expects it to be strong. He heats it, hammers it, and shapes it through pressure and fire. Without the fire, without the beating, without the repeated testing, the sword remains weak. It's the process that makes it unbreakable. And you? You are no different. Your struggles are your fire. Your failures are your hammer. Every disappointment, every rejection, every moment of self-doubt is part of the process. And just like the sword, you're being shaped into something stronger if you keep going. But most people don't. They want success without suffering. They want growth without discomfort. They want the reward without the test. That's why they stay the same. That's why their dreams remain dreams, because they weren't willing to endure what it takes to turn them into reality. So what do? First, reframe how you see the struggle. When life tests you, don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask, "What is this teaching me?" Every setback contains a lesson. Every failure carries a key to growth, but you have to look for it. Second, expect resistance. Nothing worth having comes easy. The moment you decide to change your life, obstacles will appear. Not to stop you, but to ask, are you serious? Do you really want this? If you do, you'll push through. If you don't, you'll quit, and that's how you know it wasn't meant for you. Third, understand that consistency beats intensity. Success isn't about giant leaps. It's about showing up day after day, even when you don't feel like it. Even when the progress is slow, even when it feels pointless. Because the truth is, nothing is wasted. Every effort counts, every step adds up. And one day when you look back, you'll realize this was the test that made me who I am. So ask yourself, what have you been avoiding? What challenges have you been running from? What test have you convinced yourself you can't pass? Because the only real failure is quitting. Everything else is just training. Keep going, let life test you, and show it that you refuse to break. 8. Death is the ultimate teacher. If today were your last day, would you be proud of how you lived? Would you look back with regret, wishing you had been braver, taken more risks, spoken your mind, chased what truly mattered? Or would you feel peace, knowing you had given everything, that you had lived fully without holding back? Most people live as if they are immortal. They waste time as if they have an endless supply. They put off their dreams, delay important conversations, and ignore what truly matters, all because they assume there will always be another day, another chance, another later. But there isn't. One day, there will be no tomorrow. One day, your time will run out. And the terrifying part? You don't know when that day will come. This is not meant to scare you. It's meant to wake you up. Because death is not the enemy. It is the ultimate teacher. It strips away the illusions, the distractions, the excuses. It forces you to confront what truly matters. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They practiced memento mori. Remember that you will die. Not to dwell in fear, but to live with urgency. Let death be a reminder that time is the most precious thing you have. But look at how most people live. They hold grudges over meaningless things. They spend years in jobs they hate. They stay in relationships that drain them. They waste days scrolling, watching, and distracting themselves from the fact that their life is slipping away. They act as if they have time to waste, but they don't. Nothing forces clarity like the realization that one day everything will be gone. The fears do you have now? They won't matter. The opinions of others? Meaningless. The regrets of inaction? Permanent. So what do? First, stop waiting. If there's something you want to do it. Not next year. Not when you have more time. Not when it's more convenient. Now. Time is not something you find. It's something you take. Second, stop fearing failure. What is failure compared to death? A bruised ego? A temporary setback? A lesson? If you truly grasped the fact that your days are numbered, would you still hesitate? Or would you take the risk, make the move, and chase the dream, knowing that the worst thing that could happen is nothing, compared to the regret of never trying? Third, cut out the distractions. If something does not add meaning to your life, remove it. Time spent mindlessly scrolling, engaging in meaningless arguments, seeking approval from people who don't matter, it's all theft. Theft of the only resource you can never get back. And last, face your fears. The key to courage is not to eliminate fear. It is understanding that fear loses its power when you acknowledge the reality of your own mortality. This is not just philosophy. This is not just an idea. This is the truth. You are dying. Every second, every breath, you are moving closer to the end. You can either ignore it, wasting time in denial, or you can embrace it and let it push you to live fully. So ask yourself, if today was your last day, would you be proud of how you lived? If the answer is no, change it. Because one day, that question won't be hypothetical. And by then, it will be too late. Everything you just heard, every challenge, every struggle, every test was never meant to break you. It was meant to shape you. Life does not wait, it does not pause, and neither should you. You don't find yourself, you build yourself. Every day is a choice to live with purpose, to stop waiting, to stop running from what scares you. You are in control. The hardships you face are not barriers, they are training grounds. The fears you avoid are not weaknesses, they are invitations to grow. And the time you waste? That is the only thing you can never get back. So don't waste it. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop hoping for an easier path. Start now. Train your mind to be strong. Train your actions to align with what you truly want. Live with the kind of urgency that only those who understand the value of time can have. And now I ask you, what lesson in this video spoke to you the most? What challenges are you facing that you now see differently? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Because growth doesn't happen alone. We learn, we rise, and we move forward together.